The bus station was a pulsating place, full of voices and mixed sounds, but at that moment, all I could hear was my own heart beating loudly in my chest. My name was Ethan, I was only 8 years old, and that day I was anxiously waiting for my parents. They said they needed to make a stop, something that always seemed normal to me. "Let's just go there," they said, and I believed them. My gaze fixed on the exit door, I counted the minutes, as if each one of them were an eternity. The benches around me were occupied by strangers who moved from side to side, some laughing, others arguing. I didn't understand much of those conversations, but I felt increasingly small and alone. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the perfume of someone next to me made me sick. Time passed, and anxiety began to turn into anguish. "Where are they?" I thought, biting my nails, as I looked at the clock on the wall, which seemed to mock me. With each new group that entered, my heart accelerated. "Maybe it's them," I repeated to myself, trying to deny the pain that was growing inside me. The bus station, which had previously seemed like a welcoming place, now became a maze of strangers and echoes of laughter that didn't include me. "Hey, are you okay?" asked the woman sitting next to me. She had a kind look, but I couldn't respond. I just shook my head, trying to contain the tears that threatened to escape. Finally, after hours of waiting, I got up and decided to go to the information desk. "Excuse me, have you seen my parents?" "They went to take a break and didn't come back," I said, my voice shaking. The attendant looked at me with a pitying expression, and that made me even more distressed. "I'm sorry, kid. I cannot help. But you must wait here, maybe they will come back," he replied, but his words did not bring me relief. The sun was starting to set, and the bus station lights were coming on, creating an eerie, cold atmosphere. My stomach growled, and I realized I hadn't eaten anything all day. Hope was fading, but still I looked at the door, as if suddenly they might appear. "Please come back," I whispered to myself, as the tears finally ran down my face. When the last light of day disappeared and darkness began to overtake the place, I knew something was wrong. One last look at the door was what made me realize the truth. They wouldn't come back. Desperation took over me, and I felt completely lost, like a boat adrift in a sea of strangers. My chest hurt, and a feeling of betrayal settled over me. I didn't know what to do, where to go. And then, in a moment that seemed like an eternity, I saw a car pulling up outside. My heart raced again, but as I looked closer, I recognized the silhouettes of my parents walking away, not looking back. The car drove off, and I stood there, frozen, as the pain of rejection enveloped me like a shadow. "Why?" I screamed, but the bus station swallowed my lament, and I was alone. Breathing heavily, I realized that what I knew as family had dissipated. Everything around me seemed to spin, while reality became increasingly bleak. And there, in that place that was supposed to be safe, I found myself left behind, not knowing what the future held. I woke up in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by white walls and a silence that seemed heavy in the air. My heart raced with uncertainty, and a feeling of loneliness enveloped me. The smell of disinfectant was strong, and I wondered where it was. The last memory I had was of being at the bus station, waiting for my parents who never came back. Now, I was in a shelter. When I was finally able to move, I realized I wasn't alone. Other children were around, some playing, others sitting in silence, like me. A girl with curly hair, who looked to be my age, was in the corner, drawing. Curious, I approached and asked, "Hi, what's your name?" She looked up and smiled. "Hey, I'm Lucia." "And you?" "Ethan," I replied, trying to hide the shyness that gripped me. "You live here?" "Yes. It's kind of strange, but I like it here." "There are lots of cool things to do," she said, returning to focus on her drawing. I wondered what things might be cool there, but I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. At that moment, a shelter employee entered the room. He was a tall man, with a gentle smile and eyes that seemed to understand everything. "Good morning, children. My name is Carlos, and I'm here to help you adapt," he said, in a voice that conveyed confidence. "Adaptation? For what?" I asked, with a hint of trepidation. For the new life you have ahead of you. Here, we will learn a lot of things and make new friends, said Carlos, as he crouched down to be at the children's level. Ethan, do you already enjoy learning about technology? My heart raced when I heard the word technology. I have always been fascinated by computers and everything that involves the digital world. Yes, I like. I already tried to build a computer once, I confessed, a little more excited. Carlos smiled. Excellent. We have a space here where you can explore this. If you need help, just call. In the following weeks, I found the support I needed in Carlos and Sarah, the shelter's educator. Sarah was a caring woman, with a way of speaking that made me feel safe. Ethan, you are a very smart boy. I see that you are very interested in technology. How about we work together on a project, she suggested in one of our conversations. I would love. But I don't know if I can do anything really interesting, I replied, unsure. Yes, you can. Let's think of something that will help other children, like you, encouraged Sarah. The idea of creating a project that could help people filled me with determination. So, we started working on a tool that could make life easier for children with disabilities, using simple and accessible technology. The day of the performance arrived, and although I was nervous, a rush of adrenaline ran through me when I saw all the eager faces in the audience. The shelter organized an event to showcase the children's projects, and mine was about to be presented. I looked at Sarah, who waved at me encouragingly. You can do it, Ethan. Believe in yourself, she whispered. When I got to the microphone, the words flowed. Hello everyone, my name is Ethan, and I want to introduce you to a tool I developed with Sarah's help. This tool is to help children with mobility difficulties move more easily. With every word, I saw the audience's looks of curiosity and support. As I talked about the workings and importance of what I had created, I realized that I was touching the people around me. At the end of the presentation, applause echoed throughout the room. I felt a wave of emotion invade my chest. Thank you, I finished, with a beaming smile. After the event, many people came to congratulate me. You're amazing, Ethan, said a boy I met at the shelter. I never thought I could do something like this. It was Sarah who helped me. I just put the ideas down on paper, I replied, humbly. But deep down, I knew there was something more there. That moment wasn't just about the project, it was about overcoming, about finding a purpose in the midst of the chaos that had been my life up to that point. And for the first time, I felt like maybe my future could be different than I imagined. The morning sun illuminated the school intensely, and I felt that that day would be special. The science fair was about to start, and adrenaline was rushing through my veins. I had worked hard on my project, and it wasn't just a simple idea, it was a proposal that could facilitate mobility for wheelchair users, something I always dreamed of creating. With every step I took down the corridor, I felt curious and admiring looks. Some colleagues greeted me, while others just whispered among themselves, but I didn't care. I was determined to show that it was possible to transform limitations into innovations. I arrived at the space reserved for presentations, and, as I settled in front of my project, I felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement. My booth was decorated with graphics and models that explained the functionality of the device I had developed. A sensor system that was placed on the wheelchair and helped detect obstacles, making mobility safer. As I was organizing the materials, a familiar voice caught my attention. Ethan, are you ready to rock? It was Sarah, my educator and mentor, who always believed in me. Hi, Sarah. I'm nervous but excited. I hope people like what I created, I replied, trying to hide the insecurity in my voice. She smiled, placing her hand on my shoulder. Be yourself, don't forget that your project can change lives. You've already changed yours, and that's the most important thing. Her confidence encouraged me. As the event began, I saw teachers and students gathering around the tables. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with anticipation in the air. My heart raced when I realized it was time for my presentation. With Sarah's help, I organized my materials and prepared to speak. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ethan, and today I'm going to present a project that is all about mobility and inclusion. I believe that each of us deserves the chance to move freely, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Their eyes were fixed on me, and that gave me strength. I continued explaining how the device worked, showing the models and graphics I created. With this sensor system, the wheelchair can detect obstacles, allowing the user to navigate more safely and autonomously. As I spoke, I noticed that some people were taking notes and others were murmuring among themselves. I heard comments like "amazing," and "this could really help a lot of people." With each compliment, my confidence grew even more. When I finished, applauded by some people, I felt my chest fill with pride. I had done it. After the presentation, a group of investors approached. "Ethan, your project is impressive. We're very interested in learning more about how we can help make it a reality," one of them said, with a twinkle in his eye. "Thank you so much. It means a lot to me," I replied, trying to remain calm. I believe that if we work together, we can make a big difference in many people's lives. As soon as the conversation started to flow, my heart was in celebration. The feeling of accomplishment was indescribable. As we discussed possibilities, I couldn't help but think about my parents, who abandoned me years ago. Would they be proud of me? This doubt assailed me, but I quickly shook it off. I had a new family now, made up of friends and educators who truly cared. At the end of the fair, as I headed to the parking lot, I was surprised by a report that was being shown on a big screen next to the entrance. The images showed children in wheelchairs, and, in the middle of that, an image of me, smiling, presenting my project. A reporter's voice echoed, "Ethan, a promising young man who overcame adversity and became a leader in innovation." I was paralyzed, emotion took over me. Not only had I overcome the barriers of my wheelchair, but I had also become an example of resilience and creativity. What would my parents have to say about this? The image of them in my mind, distant and hazy, began to become clearer. They were part of my story, but they would not define my future. What mattered was who I was now and what I could still achieve. The technology conference event pulsed with vibrant energy. With every step I took, I felt adrenaline rushing through my veins. It was a moment I had been waiting for months, an opportunity to connect with influential people who could help bring my ideas to life. My friends from the shelter were with me, and their laughter and support gave me courage. As I looked at the space full of stands and people discussing innovations, my mind was racing a mile a minute. "Ethan, look at that table. They are introducing new accessibility software," said Lucas, my best friend, as he pointed to a group of excited people. I smiled at him, but my heart was racing. I needed to prepare for my presentation. I took a deep breath and focused on what I was about to do. When I finally reached the stage, the light from the spotlight was blinding, but I wasn't intimidated. With the help of a friend, I set up my laptop and started talking about my project. The idea of a device that would facilitate mobility for wheelchair users was more than a simple project. It was a part of me, a way to show the world that accessibility is a right, not a privilege. The words flowed out of me, and I felt the audience involved. However, in the back of my mind, something was bothering me. A familiar yet strange presence. I looked towards the back of the room and, to my surprise, I saw two figures that looked familiar. My parents. They were there, watching. The air became heavy. My hands were shaking a little, but I continued talking, trying to ignore the storm of emotions that was building up inside me. After the presentation, as I was trying to process what had happened, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Sarah, my educator and mentor. "You were amazing, Ethan. Your project could really change lives." She was radiant, and that gave me a little cheer. "Thank you," I started to respond, but a familiar voice interrupted me. "Ethan?" It was my mother's voice. I froze. I slowly turned around, and there they were, my father and mother, with expressions that mixed nervousness and expectation. The anger I thought I had overcome was now returning with a vengeance. "Hi," I replied, not knowing how to feel. What were they doing there? What do you want? My father looked at me, his face drawn. We need to talk, son. We're sorry for what we did. Those words seemed empty, like a distant echo. Are you sorry? After 5 years, this is what you have to say? Indignation took over me. You left me. They abandoned me at a bus station, and now they come here, as if nothing had happened? My mother tried to get closer, but I backed away. Ethan, please, we were going through a difficult time. We didn't know how to deal with everything. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Wasn't it supposed to be like this? Did you think leaving me behind was the solution? You have no idea what I went through. And now, you are here, as if you could fix everything with a few words. Anger and pain boiled inside me, and I could barely hold back the tears. This is all our fault, my father said, his voice breaking. We were so lost. I just wanted you to know that we regret it. Repentance doesn't change what happened. I am no longer the child you abandoned. Look at me. I pointed to my project, which was now being admired by other people around. I am someone. I achieved. And you have no right to appear in my life as if everything is fine. The silence that followed was deafening. My heart was racing, and I was fighting the confusion of feelings that consumed me. Part of me wanted to scream, but another wanted to understand. Because now? Why, after all? Before I could process any further, a group of people approached to congratulate my project, distracting me from the tense conversation. Meanwhile, my parents stood on the sidelines, watching. Their gaze, which had previously conveyed anger to me, now revealed a deep sadness. But the pain I felt was greater. The betrayal was still fresh in my memory, and the idea of forgiveness seemed distant. Ethan, we want to help you, my mother said, finally breaking the silence. We want to know more about what you are doing and how we can be a part of it. Part of it? I laughed sarcastically. Do you really think you can come into my life now, as if nothing ever happened? It doesn't work like that. As the words left my mouth, I realized I was at a crossroads. What would I do now? What did I really want? The answer was still far from clear, but one thing was certain: I wasn't ready to simply accept his apology. My heart was divided, but the truth was that I had a new family now, those who supported me and believed in me, not those who left me behind. The conference room was filled with unfamiliar faces, all in awe of the technological innovations being presented. My projects, which had once been just dreams in my mind, were now reality, and I was ready to show the world what I was capable of. But in the midst of all the excitement, a familiar voice cut through the air, and my heart stopped. Ethan? The voice was soft, almost hesitant. I looked to the side, and there were my parents, with expressions that I couldn't decipher. The first reaction was surprise, followed by a wave of anger that rose like a wildfire in my chest. How did they have the audacity to show up here, now, after everything they've done? Ethan, we need to talk, my mother insisted, but I couldn't find the words. What should I say? That I didn't need them? That the life I built had no room for your empty promises? About what? I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. About abandonment? About how you left me behind like I was a burden? What do you have to say that could change that? My father, who had remained silent, finally spoke. We're sorry, son. We didn't know how to deal with the situation. Life got difficult, and we... Difficult? I interrupted, feeling like my anger was about to explode. It was difficult for me. I'm the one left behind, and yet I managed to get back on my feet. You have no idea what I went through. I don't need your excuses. I've already overcome it all. Please, Ethan, my mother begged, her eyes shining with tears. We're here now, and we want to be part of your life. We can change. Can you change? I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was a laugh full of pain and distrust. Do you think this is how it works? After 5 years of silence, you think you can just go back as if nothing happened? My mother opened her mouth, perhaps to argue, but I didn't want to hear anymore. Anger boiled inside me, but there was something more. A feeling of vulnerability, of insecurity. And as I tried to understand how I felt, something began to form in my mind. What if I tell you I don't want you in my life anymore? What are you going to do? I challenged, looking straight into their eyes. And in that moment, I could see the confusion and pain they were feeling too. But that didn't change what they had done. That's not what we want, Ethan, my father said, his voice cracking. We want to support you, help you have a better life. Help? You don't know what this is. I retorted firmly. You guys can't just show up and want to be a family after what you did. And then, in the midst of the discussion, a new idea began to form in my mind. An idea that could change everything. Why are you really here? I asked, watching their every move. What do you want from me? My mother's expression changed, and for an instant, I saw something I hadn't expected: despair. We are experiencing financial difficulties, Ethan. We need support. Your story, your journey, can help us. Wait a minute. What I was hearing was a frightening revelation. Do you intend to use my story to make money? Is that it? No, that's not how it works, my father was quick to defend, but I could see the truth unfolding before me. You just wanted to exploit my pain for your own benefit, I said, my voice shaking with indignation. That's what they really are. The room around us seemed to disappear, and all I could hear was the racing beat of my heart. The betrayal I felt now became even more palpable. The anger that burned inside me turned into something deeper, a determination that I wouldn't let this happen. I wouldn't let them use my story as a weapon. I'm not a tool for you, I declared, voice firm. I'm so much more than that. I'm Ethan, and I'm going to make my own story, without you. Before they could respond, I walked away, the weight of the world on my shoulders, but at the same time, a new sense of freedom was beginning to well up within me. I didn't need them. I had built my own life. And now it was time to fight for what really mattered. Tension hung in the air like a storm about to break out. I looked at my parents, their pale faces illuminated by the cold light of the auditorium. Anger boiled inside me, a mixture of pain and indignation that I could barely contain. Sarah, next to me, held my hand firmly, as if trying to anchor me in that sea of emotions. Ethan, we're so sorry, my mother began, her voice shaky and full of regret. We never wanted you to suffer. It was a difficult decision. Difficult? I replied, unable to hide my disbelief. Hard is what I went through all these years while you were out there living your lives. It's not easy to be abandoned. It's not easy to live with the consequences of your choices. She looked away, and I could see a tear slide down her face. My father, on the other hand, seemed more nervous. He was swinging his legs incessantly, perhaps trying to find a way out of this untenable situation. Ethan, please give us a chance to explain, he insisted, his voice tense. We are trying to be better, to change, best? I interrupted, frustration boiling over. You have no idea what that means. I don't need your empty promises. I did all this alone. And now you show up, trying to reconnect, but it's only because you heard about my success. I am your redemption story, am I not? The words came out with a ferocity I didn't know I possessed. Silence settled between us, an invisible barrier that seemed insurmountable. The truth was beginning to form in my mind, an urgent need to expose not just the abandonment, but what was really happening. And one more thing, I continued, taking a deep breath. I found out about the scheme you guys are using. They're taking advantage of my story to make money, aren't they? My father's gaze hardened, and my mother bit her lip as if trying to hold back a scream. Ethan, that's not true, she tried to argue, but I wasn't about to hear any more lies. I have evidence. Sarah and I collected everything. The documents, the messages, the recordings. You can't escape this. It's not just abandonment, it is the exploration of who I am. And this will not go unpunished. The shock on their faces was almost palpable. I could feel a wave of relief mixed with a biting cold. Finally, the truth was coming out, and I was no longer willing to be the silent victim. The press conference was scheduled for the next day, and I knew this would be the decisive moment. With Sarah's help, I organized everything meticulously. She encouraged me to be firm, to keep my head up, and not to let my emotions get the better of me. Her support was all I needed. On the day of the press conference, the auditorium was packed. Reporters, cameras, and a crowd of curious faces waiting for the truth. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and, with a firm voice, exposed not only the abandonment, but also the hypocrisy of my parents. Today, I'm not just here to talk about what I experienced, but to expose the truth. I began, observing the audience's reactions. My parents abandoned me, but what is even more shocking is that they are exploiting my story for their own benefit. This is unacceptable. Indignation began to grow in the room. Looks of disapproval, murmurs of disbelief. I continued, feeling the strength of the words flow out of me. I am not a tool for you to make money. I am a person, and I am finally here to claim my worth. When I finished, the silence was broken by applause and shouts of support. The feeling of liberation was overwhelming. My parents, however, were silent, their faces flushed with embarrassment. The consequences of his actions were about to unfold, and I knew justice would be served. Over time, news about the fraudulent scheme spread, and authorities were quick to act. My heart filled with a mixture of sadness and relief as I saw my parents being taken into custody. They needed to face the consequences of their choices. And as justice began to unfold, I received a scholarship to a prestigious university. The future I always dreamed of was within my reach, and finally, I was ready to embrace it. The betrayal and pain of the past would no longer define me. I was Ethan, and my story was just beginning.